Hello and welcome to the stream today. My name is Matt and I am the training manager here at Beacon Software. Today's Feature Friday we're going to cover how to enter a call. Now most of our customers already know how to enter a call, but this training is going to be focused on what all the buttons do. Maybe you're not familiar with how auto dispatching works. Maybe you have a new employee that needs to learn how to use the system. That's what this training is going to cover today. So let's go ahead and just jump straight in. All right, so what we're looking at here is the main dispatch screen, and I do want to bring this up. Whenever we have updates to the system, we're going to go ahead and have this little what's new dialog box. So the last update that we did showed tracking drivers, new features on the map. We had a couple other things that were added here, and then at the bottom we always show bug fixes. This is a great way to get information on what we're updating in the software. Now, if you just kind of click this away really quick, up in your menu here, you can always go to the change log and get that same information. Right. So what we're looking at is the main dispatch screen here. We already have a couple calls on here. We can kind of see these are a little bit older, but we can see that I have one in waiting, a couple in assigned, two in holding. Down here, this is how I get to my drivers and my vehicles. And this little button right here is a toggle button. If I want to collapse this menu to see more of the screen, I can do that. So when logging in, this is how the view is going to appear to you. Now you're able to change that right up here with this little drop down. So what we're in is the details view. Right, so this allows you to click on the calls on the menu here and see all the information to the right. This button right here is a toggle button, which you could also click. And this would give you things like when the call was dispatched, confirmed, en route, and so forth. As long as the driver's GPS is turned on, we're also going to see a calculated arrival time here. Now this is going to be useful for maybe customers calling in to see when a driver is supposed to be there, or maybe you're tracking a driver when they're supposed to be arriving to that call to meet your ETAs. But this will show us here a time that the driver should be getting to that call based on where they timestamp their call in the field. All right. The map view allows us to keep the same menu, but see all of our calls to the right here. Right. We have a couple options up here. This will let us zoom in and out. We can zoom to just our either our drivers or our jobs, depending on what we want to see. We can detach the map if we have multiple monitors, so we can keep it up all the time. And in the little gear icon, we can change things like map mode to road or satellite, if you like looking at it that way. This asset type here between drivers and vehicles, if the drivers are using their cell phones, it should be on drivers. If you have a GPS integration, it should be on vehicles. You can toggle between the two, but if you're not using a GPS integration, it should be on drivers. And then other things for the jobs, if you want to see the jobs, the numbers specifically, or the truck type for it. And then on your drivers on the map, you can either use them as their initials or their driver number, whichever you prefer. Right. The other two views we have are the large grid. Again, this kind of gives us all the call information on our dispatch screen. And all of these columns are adjustable. So if notes is more important to me when I'm dispatching, I can grab this column and move it towards the beginning. And I can also space this out if it's easier for me to see, or I want to see more of this field perhaps. Any of the fields that are all the way to the right, so for example, coverage. Again, maybe that's important to me. I may need to grab this and move this over and slide our bar and do it again until I get it to where I want it. Right. And finally, we have the classic grid. This will allow us to see the most amount of calls on our screen, but we also have a lot of fields to the right. And again, all of these can be moved into different locations. Oops, let me grab that again. Different locations, and you can space these out per user. So this does let you customize your dispatch screen to information that you would need quickly when you're dispatching. And then the different views, really people change this based on how busy they are. If you have a lot of calls on the board for a day, you may like the classic grid because you can see the most amount of calls. Or if it's maybe a little bit slower, you don't run as many calls at the same time throughout the day, one of the other large grid or details view might be better for you to see your calls. I'm going to go ahead and create a call now, and then we're going to go through what all these little buttons at the top do. So let me just hit create a job. All right. So we may need to select our division and our account. I'm going to use our Bob's Cadillac account. Now, when you open up a call, you'll immediately see that some of these fields are different colors. The yellow fields are going to be required entry fields. That means as a dispatcher, I have to put information in those fields before I can dispatch that call. The orange fields are driver fields or required entry fields. That means our driver is prompted for this information in the field, and they should be putting that information in for us. As a dispatcher, if we have it though, we can absolutely fill it out. And then these pink fields down here, in this case the PO, this is going to be a billing field. So by the time this call gets over to our accounting side, if that information in that field is not filled out, it's going to prompt who's ever doing our accounting work that the call is missing information, and either at that time they need to fix it or override it. Right. So in this example, I'll go ahead and make some information. So owner information. We may have an email address. Email is going to be helpful, especially if you're using some of the either text messaging or email surveys or status updates. This is where that is used. Landmarks, we can type the name of a place in. So if I was going to Giant Eagle, for example, it's going to go ahead and pull up the nearest locations to my division or location address. All right, so we have one here on Royalton Road that's pretty close to the office. So I put it in, hit tab, and it fills out my address. I could also do the same thing with the address. So if I know a certain address and I start typing it in, it's going to start pulling or try to pre-fill that address for us. So let's just say it is this Medina Road address, and here it is. Right. Notes and directions, this is used for our drivers. So any information we might need to tell them ahead of time can go in this box. Car information, we'll say this is a Honda Civic. Say maybe it's red. Right. Now, if you have a car, it should pre-fill it or find it for you. This is going to be used for towing instructions. If you're moving maybe a piece of equipment or something else that's not a car, or maybe it's a heavy that it's not finding in this drop-down, you can type whatever you want in here. You could also use these 3 dots to manually put information in. As a dispatcher, if I need to get towing instructions, I can click this little hook icon. The driver also has access to this. This is going to give them things like hook points, jack points, recommended ways to tow the vehicle, weight of the vehicle, things like that. If we need that on the dispatch side, though, that's what this icon does. Right. Equipment number or vehicle number, perhaps, depending on your call. VIN numbers. This button is a VIN validate. So if I had a full VIN number here, I could press this and get the car information. License plate and state, and then have what we call magic VIN. So if I type in a plate and the state abbreviation, in this case Ohio, and I hit this button, this is going to go to Carfax and do a search. In this case, this is going to give us a VIN number and a car. And if I hit select, it will add it to our call for us right above here. Again, these were supposed to be driver fields, but as a dispatcher, I may have this information and I can fill it out. My driver, if they need to, can then change it in the field. If not, it's just one less thing they have to do. Key location, maybe if it's being left, maybe it's under driver floor mat. Right. Reason for the call, tow, whatever it is, let's just say it's a tow. Priorities, now you can add additional priorities in your dictionary in your settings. These are going to be helpful to identify your calls when you're on the dispatch screen. So if I have a police call, for example, I'll see this icon on my dispatch screen and I'll know maybe I need to pay more attention to those types of calls. Due to typically having to be there faster than most of your other calls. No release would be for any sort of hold that you might have on a vehicle. And then down here with the destination, now this works the same as the incident location. So if I type in an address, it will pre-fill it for us. If it's going to impound though, we use this drop down and we see all of our accounts in here. But we should also have right here, this green light impound, and it will say impound next to it. When I press on that, the address should automatically fill out for that address, again, as long as it was set up correctly in our settings. Bill tos, typically the same as our requested by, but not always. Ticket numbers and member numbers, you may or may not be using these. Purchase order numbers, again, could be something you get ahead of time. Maybe you're getting that after the call's finished, in this case because it's a billing field. How the customer is paying if we know. Member limits, mileage limits, co-pays possibly. Maybe a quoted price, and then finally remarks. Any of these fields in your settings can possibly be hidden if you want to. You could also highlight different fields, show different fields to the drivers. all of that can be configured into your settings. Right? So at this point, we have a completed call. At the bottom down here, this is where we need to add a service. Every call before you dispatch it has to have at least one service on it. Otherwise, you can't dispatch it to a driver. We have a bunch of services. If I put my tow service on, I already have a price set up in my settings. So this is $40, and I hit the plus to add it. Now, if I need to add mileage, perhaps for this call, let's say I have en route miles. I can add the service, and now I can use my calculator, and it will calculate the distance from our, in this case, en route is going to be our division address, and our pickup, in this case, this Medina Road, and it's 15.94 miles away. Now, really quick, if we look at our rate, it shows us that the first 5 miles are free on this, and then it's $2 a mile after that. So it's already factoring in the first 5 miles on this and giving us the correct price. Hit here. We could also do the same thing, for mileage or return miles, deadhead, anything like that. Same idea. Now this one will do pick up to drop off, give us the right price. We just really need to click the OK unless we have to edit the price for some reason. Right. Any hourly charges, let's say labor, we can either do a quantity. So if it was 2 hours, for example, I can do a quantity of 2. They also can use the calculator, and I can put the times in manually if I want to by using this little calendar icon. So let's say we started at 1, for example, and maybe we finished at 3. Let's make it 3:15, something like that. It will automatically figure out the hours for us, and what happens is it puts it in here then as a beginning and ending time for our customers. We could also, now I don't have anything on here because I haven't dispatched it yet, but these little drop downs here allows me to use the assigned en route or arrive times or the loaded, dropped, or finished timestamps from my driver. So if this was a finished call and I'm adjusting it after the fact, I can use my driver's timestamps to figure out the time here as well. All right, so that should be a pretty good call for us to start with. Now, these comments here, let me go back. This comment here goes to your driver. This comment here also goes to your driver unless you shut it off in your settings. Some customers like to use this as an internal box and use this one just for the drivers. The customer doesn't see any of those. The customer does see this one though. So if I typed a note in here, test note for example, when the customer gets their invoice, let's show you here. Let's do a quick save. Oh, let's look at this here real fast before I bring up the invoice. What this is doing, this is verifying the addresses I put on the call. Be careful with this. If I hit select, it will update or change potentially my addresses. In this case, this is the incident. It will do the same thing for the destination. The reason you want to be careful of this, if you're not paying attention and you just kind of blindly click select on this, you can potentially change your address and send your driver to the wrong location. And do the same thing for the destination. And now I can bring up that invoice. I'll show you these test notes here. When it brings up the invoice here, all the way down here on our services, this is where the customer is seeing any notes that you may have put in those boxes next to the services. Right? Okay. Right. Other than that, on the call, the only other buttons we didn't touch base on are the ones right here. So the I or information icon, if we have any additional information saved in the call, under settings, under the general tab in settings, you'll see that information here. All right, same thing for a potential bill to, you would see that information here. This button and this button is for mapping. The same map or verification that just came up when I saved the call will come up ahead of time. So some customers like to do this beforehand. Once you verify this address the first time, on this map though, maybe you have a cross street, maybe you have a location on a highway. This pin, I can right click on it and I can move it wherever it needs to go. So if they were on, let's say 271 here, right here, I can grab that before I dispatch this call, and then those coordinates are sent to our driver. It's not going to change your address here, but when your driver uses their navigation on their phone, it will navigate to wherever you drop this pin. You could also do this on the big map that we looked at before. but some customers like to do it ahead of time before they actually dispatch that call out. You can do the same thing for the destination right here. Before I close the call and go back to the dispatch screen, I just want to cover some of the buttons up across the top. So we do have save and close that will save and close the call, take us back to our dispatch screen. We do have an option to just quickly save anything that we're doing if we use the drop down, save and auto assign, and save and finish. Save and auto assign is going to automatically assign the driver to this call based on how you set it up in settings. So if you set it up for best ETA, it's going to automatically pick the driver with the best ETA and assign it. Otherwise, you're going to do it manually from the dispatch screen, or at least have the chance to pick which driver you want to send. And then save and finish will basically just save and finish the call for today's date. So today being the 23rd, it would automatically finish out that call. Payments, if we need to take a payment on the call, let's save it really quick again. We're able to take payments. And again, you can take it any other payment method, cash check, whatever it happens to be. Invoice, we've already looked at. Uploading images. The driver has the ability to upload images for each of those calls. We can also upload them from our computer if we need to. There's a little more drop down. We have a couple options in here. Swap out. This is going to be helpful for if you are swapping out a vehicle at a different location. What this does, it will create, I'll go ahead and click on it. Are you sure you want to swap out this vehicle? Yes. This will create another call, and it has the same call number. So here's our first one, 9422. Here's our swap out vehicle, 9422. What this will do on the accounting side is merge these invoices together, and it gives us the ability to give a customer one invoice with both trips on it. Right? As you can see for a swap out though, if we look at our address again, our Medina address and our Saddleford address right here. On a swap out, it flips it because it's assuming you're going there and bringing that car back. It does clear out the vehicle on the second one because it assumes that you are bringing back a different vehicle. And then you can add your services to the second call, and again, have the ability to give your customer one invoice with both trips on it. We'll go ahead and close that one. Duplicating the call, this is a little bit different. This would be useful for if you had maybe a wreck and you had 2 or 3 cars at the same location. Duplicating the call, let's go ahead and click on it. Yes. We'll create a new call number, so in this case, 9423. So completely separate call number in the system, typically a totally separate billing or at least another invoice that you want to generate. That's what your duplicate call will do versus a swap out. So swap out, same call number, duplicate call, different call numbers. If we have security, we can view payments and receipts on the call if we need to. Driving directions, this is going to be helpful if we need to see that on the dispatch side, we can get that. Send job link photo, send job photo link, excuse me. What this is useful for, it brings this a little up here, you can type in the person's email address that you want to send a link for, and these don't have any photos on it, but if we had photos on this, I would be able to send a link to a customer, an insurance company, and they would be able to see all the photos I saved with this call. Print job, let me bring this up just to show you. Basically what a print job will do, this is going to be all the information on that call. So it's not necessarily an invoice or a receipt, but it just breaks down all the information that's on the call, right? Including potential driver timestamps if they've had it, who we assigned it to, and so forth. So usually people aren't giving this to a customer, but I have had customers that use this just to file it, so they have a copy of it. View the tow ticket. We'll look at that here real fast. The tow ticket is what the driver can send from the driver app. So it's very close to what an invoice looks like, but on a tow ticket, you may have a damage release. If the driver captured the customer signature in the field, we would have a signature on here as well. The tow ticket also has the option to hide this pricing, so that could be helpful for maybe your motor clubs if you're doing that type of work. You can hide all this pricing. It still gives you the option to give your customer a receipt basically, but seeing all the pricing that maybe doesn't apply to them, you can hide that. So that's the difference between a full invoice and a tow ticket. You have a couple extra settings on your tow ticket, but again, the tow ticket would also show the customer's signature if we got that in the field. View vehicle damage. Our drivers have the ability to do a damage claim in the field. So they basically get a picture of this car, they tap on it where there's damage, and they start putting additional information like pictures, more detail, what's wrong with it, so on and so forth. They could also capture the customer's signature, which would appear down here as well. And then all the damage that they recorded would appear over here in the list. So if we need to see that from dispatch, we can do that. This is the last report that we'll pull up. I do want to show you this before I close this. Any reports that you bring up, you can obviously print them. You can email them from our software. You can fax them from our software. Or if you need to save it as another file format like a PDF or something else, you do have those options here. Any emails or faxes that you do send, we do keep track of those in the reports under the admin section. And then last is an audit log. This is the old audit log that we used to use. Some customers may know how to use this or read it. Some of the codes are a little bit harder for some of our newer customers. What I recommend though, if you're trying to figure out who changed things on a call, use the new history tab that we've added right here. This is going to be a lot easier to read than that old audit log, but we can see here I added this mileage service, and these are the changes I made. I added this in-route service. If I deleted a service, or if my driver timestamped a call, anything that happened to that call, it will be recorded in the history tab. So we recommend using that over the old audit log, but some customers may be used to the old audit log, so it's still there. Right? The rest of these tabs that are up across the top, again, before I save it, the custom tab, this is additional fields that you can put information in. These column or each field description here can be changed if we need to. This can be done in settings. Dispatch. Normally in the normal course of a dispatch, our driver will get assigned. We'll see all their timestamps over here. The only time you really ever have to go to this is if you're either researching something or if you need to backdate a call. So maybe this call happened yesterday, for example. I can change this to the 22nd and maybe the time. Maybe they finished it yesterday around 5 o'clock, right? This will allow me to backdate it and manually put the driver in who did that call, right? If we don't need to do that, or if you're not backdating a call, you don't change this information, you're going to dispatch your call from the main dispatch screen. Right? Auctions tab, if this car went to maybe for an auction for lien processing or for lien, you can go ahead and put the information in here, lien holder information. Photos would show here. Any pictures that the driver took or any photos that we uploaded would be here. Liens, for states that we do not do tow lien in, you may find your state's letters here. These would generate the letters and you would mail them yourself. If your letters are not available here, let us know. We can possibly put them in here for you. And then again, history that we just covered. Right. So those are all the little buttons that are available on the call. So I'm going to go ahead and save and close it. Oops, I already saved it. All right, so here is our call right here. So to assign this, we can do this a couple different ways. If I know which driver I want to take on the call, let's go ahead and pick our drivers. I can take them from the list and just drag them up to the call. Maybe I need to pick a different truck they're in, and then I can assign it. Right? If I click on a call and I use the assign button, the quick action, or right-clicking on the call, whichever you prefer, this would take us into a recommended tow mode. And now I can sort the drivers by the best ETA, most fuel efficient, longest idle, round robin. My drivers aren't logged in this example, but if they were, this would show you the location where they're at and how close they are to the pickup of this call. If drivers are assigned to calls, like some of these guys here, this will show you from their final destination. In this case, Alex, wherever he's going to end up, he'll be 26.42 miles away, but he's only 20% done of his one job. So it gives you some job progression on this as well. Same thing. Right. So I can pick a driver. Actually, let's pick Dan. Actually, I got to add a service. Which one was mine? Was it? It was this one. Sorry. Let's try that again. Sign it. So that's call is going to move off of our waiting queue and into our assigned queue. Shows in this case Dan has been dispatched to this call, and at this point the driver would take over and they would start timestamping it, adding those pictures, signatures, things like that. Now if I need to for some reason, I can manually timestamp this for the driver. The driver really should be able to do that in the field as long as they're using the driver app, but we can always manually override it. Again, with the right clicking, I can do the same thing. The other buttons, all these buttons and everything in this more dropdown, it's the same as you right clicking on it and just seeing one big menu. So again, whichever way you prefer. But we can assign additional resources to this call, what that's going to be used for. So we'll take us into the same screen here. This will allow me to assign a secondary driver to the call. So maybe I'm going to put Alex on this call. Now both of my drivers got an alert on their phone and they're both assigned to this call. Right. I can unassign the call. So in this case I have two drivers. Maybe I assigned that to Alex by mistake. I can take him off of that call. And maybe Dan can't do that call for some reason. I got to give it to somebody else. So I can unassign it, and what that's going to do, that call will move back into our waiting screen, and then I can assign it to somebody else. So maybe Brian's going to go on that call. I can cancel the call if I have the security level to do that, and I can put a reason in, maybe test call. That will get rid of our call for us. There's no way to truly delete a call in our system. You can only cancel it, and you also have to have the right security level to be able to do that. Take payment, the same as if I had the call open. Preview invoice, swap out, duplicate job, view payments, view account information, possible driving directions. All the same information that we had from that more dropdown, you can get from the dispatch screen as well. Go into a waiting call. There's one other thing I want to show you here, and that is the status of your calls and the ETAs. So normally when you're putting a call in, you're going to put your ETA up at the top. Let's say it's 60 minutes, whatever it is, and then it will automatically add 60 minutes to your time, basically giving the driver an hour to get to that call. If it's a waiting call, that's going to drop immediately into our waiting screen. Right? The other two statuses you can have for your call is appointment or holding. The difference is if I make a holding call, it will stay in the holding screen forever until you do something with it. This can be used for maybe you have to move a bunch of vehicles. You may create calls for them in the system, and then as you have drivers free up, you can assign them. If you make an appointment call and then we schedule it, so let's do, it's the 23rd. Let's say 6 p.m. Let's do for this year, though, because this is an old call. So 2020. So based on this, and at least the default settings, if I schedule this as an appointment, this will also go into my holding screen. But an hour before this, or whatever you have set up on your account, it would automatically move from holding into your waiting queue. So if it was an hour, what would happen at 5 p.m., this call would automatically move out of holding and into waiting. Right? So that's how you can use the different statuses on the calls as well, depending on if it's a holding call, if it's an appointment call, or a call that you're going to take care of right away. Right? And that basically sums up how to dispatch a call through the system. If you have any questions, you can always give us a call. If you need additional help, we offer full-time training and support for the system. If you liked the videos and you found it useful, consider hitting the subscribe button for future updates. You might also want to follow our Facebook page because next month we're going to start doing live trainings on our Facebook page as well. As always, thank you for your time, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.